Hello everyone, thank you for purchasing this preset pack. I sincerely appreciate it and I hope you love it and get tons of use out of it. If you haven't already read the reference guide and user manual, that would be a good place to start. There's tons of information in there that I won't cover in this quick video. But I did want to create this video just to help those of you who are more visual learners and would like to see a quick demonstration of the workflow that's intended for using this pack. So to start here, I'm just gonna use this photo that I took a couple of summers ago. It was a nice little afternoon boat ride that we went on. So the intended workflow of all of these, as you can see on the left here, they kind of go from top to bottom, and I mentioned that in the manual as well, but the workflow is essentially laid out in that way because it is convenient and easy, and it makes all the presets a little more flexible than they would be just trying to navigate without all these tools. So this is how it would typically work is, bring in your photo. You can make your white balance adjustments, which I'll just warm this up a bit. Maybe not quite so magenta. That looks pretty good to me, pretty neutral. And then I would hover over the different looks. So starting with the black and white and just kind of browsing through here until you find one that you like on the scene. And you can see here like the difference in the trees and the background, the difference in the red tones. So they all have these different characteristics. Again, like in the reference guide, I go way more in detail about what all went into making these particular looks. But for the sake of simplicity of this little tutorial, I'm just going to choose this Kodak inspired one here. With one click, we're already in a really cool place, in my opinion. I think it's a really nice look for this scene in particular. And once you select what you like, the next step would honestly be to go over here and just hover over these adjustment layers that you can add. And these will work on top of all the presets. So these work on all the presets. It basically is a way for you to manipulate how the highlights are being rolled off in your image. To kind of work with the scene that you have. So if you look in the middle here around the highlights on this seaplane, let me zoom in here. So you can really get an idea of these different roll-offs and how they affect the highlights of the image. And I think for this particular one, I kind of like this raising them with a soft setting, and that just adds. I'll do a quick before and after. It adds a bit less highlight detail, but it lets the scene get a little brighter, which I enjoy on this. And these will work with any of them. So then the next step would be, so just to recap, we've picked the preset we like. We've chosen the highlight roll off that we enjoy for this particular scene. And then you would jump down to picking your grain structure next, which each preset does have its own look built in as far as which grain settings I chose. So you might like it the way it is, and that's great. But if not, then you can add these down here, which are just sort of general 35 millimeter or 120 grains. You can see the 120 one's a lot finer, less noticeable, and then the 35 one's got a little bit more chunk, a little more grit to it. And then, of course, the option to just completely remove it, which is great for those of you who don't really enjoy so much grain in your digital images. So for now, I'll just click on 35. I'll zoom back out. And then the next setting is your sharpening. And this will be like your last step pretty much. You can choose whether to not sharpen it at all. Standard, which would be basically just setting it to where Lightroom would bring it in by default. However, I'll go over in this panel so I can show you. In the sharpening area, here we go. They all have a level of masking applied. The standard one has a little bit more. And if you're not familiar with this, if you hold Option and drag the masking slider up, you can see everything that's white is being sharpened. And as you go up, everything that's turning black is going to not be sharpened. So the sharpening is just going to ignore those areas. And the reason I like this is because you're not just sharpening the sensor noise or the background or sky information that really doesn't have any detail, and it will just make it look more gritty. So I usually just pull it up until it's sort of at the level where only the things that I want to be a focus of the photo are being sharpened. So somewhere around there is good. And that's where, the standard setting is. If you want a little stronger sharpening, I lowered that down so that more things will be sharpened, and also raised the amount and played with the radius and detail until I thought it looked pleasing. And if I go back over here again, because all these tools are non-destructive, I can just click no film grain, and let's go back to no sharpening, and we'll jump to strong sharpening, and you can see the difference, especially if you look right here. So I'll undo that. That's no sharpening, and that's the strong sharpening setting. So you can see what's really happening there. Cool. And then, feel free when you're done to make all the different changes you'd like. You can play with your exposure and white balance one more time. Try playing with saturation and vibrance. Do whatever you want. There's no rules here. This is just to get you in a really good starting point really quickly. And sometimes it works where one click is the solution, and sometimes you might want to play with it until you're a little happier with it. And then, of course, do any kind of creative adjustments you want with these color wheels, and just try out things until you're happy with it. But that's sort of the general workflow. So you're working from top to bottom. I highly recommend, no matter what preset you're applying. So let's go back to just, the black and white one. You can play with these every time. I would honestly hover over these every single time, unless you click the thing and you're just like, wow, that's exactly what I was envisioning. These can really transform the scene, especially if the highlights are feeling a little wonky. So highly recommend doing this step. If you at least glance over them, you'll just unlock worlds of potential with each look that you might not have had before if you just kind of click and hope it to be right every time. So again, all these adjustments, the film grains, the sharpening, they're all non-destructive. One quick note would be that if you, let's say you're on this black and white one and you pick one of these adjustments, it will apply to this look as long as you don't change presets. If you change presets, so if I were to jump to this Fuji look, it's going to it's going to revert back to what the Fuji look is by default. So then you can go back through, hover over these, and choose which one you like for that particular preset, and you can apply it, and it's all still working the same way. The only other thing to note, I would say, just a quick little extra piece would be that this cool look, if you warm it up, it actually starts looking really neat, and it kind of makes this preset a bit of a double-edged sword. That looks really good warmed up. So if you don't necessarily like how cold it is, but you like the color shifts and the things that are happening with the greens and blues, just play that temperature slider a little bit more in that particular preset, and then it'll get you to an entirely different place. And then the last one that I haven't talked about here, which is kind of the outlier, is the Nightfall preset, which I made specifically for scenes like this one here, where it's super dark and has artificial light sources in it. And the way I've built this is sort of just with the intent of, and I'll bring the exposure up a little bit here because this was a little underexposed from a few years ago. Me and my buddy Brian went to Chicago for a few nights, and it was fun. But this happened on a whim. I just saw the scene pop up, so I just turned the camera on and kind of fired a few shots. So it's a little underexposed, but it'll work good for this demonstration. Nightfall is really cool. Again, one click gets you in a really good place. Really enjoy this look. And just some things to point out about this look that are why it works really well for these type of scenes, but not necessarily others, is that I'm doing some pretty dramatic things in these tone curves in order to make the highlights roll off into this nice warm glow on artificial light sources. So you can see it makes a massive difference, really just way more pleasing. And in the mid-tones, you're getting this nice cyan sort of look, and you're separating this kind of purpley wash that can happen at nighttime by really pulling the blue-green tones and the magenta tones sort of away from each other. So you really get this nice color palette, and then you can adjust, your white balance if you want to cool it back down or add a little more green, or, do whatever you'd like from there. But really, this is built to get you in a really great spot for night shooting really fast. And I thought this was a good example to include. So hopefully that all makes sense. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out. My DMs are always open on Instagram as well. So I hope you guys get a lot of use out of this preset pack. Thank you so much again for your support. And I hope you enjoy it.